What's up? I'm Lily Revenge Crown, brings you the stories that keep you hooked. If that sounds good, smash subscribe and let's go.
The Riverside Country Club dining room was decorated exactly as Mom had demanded. White roses, gold accents, and place cards in calligraphy that cost $12 each. 43 guests celebrating 35 years of my parents' marriage, and I'd spent the first hour listening to my sister Vanessa describe her upcoming wedding to a software engineer she'd met 9 months ago. The venue alone is $18,000, Vanessa was saying, extending her left hand so the afternoon light caught the half-carat diamond. But Marcus insisted on the best. He's so generous. Mom clutched Vanessa's hand, examining the ring for the dozenth time. It's beautiful, sweetheart. You've done so well for yourself. An engineer with a master's degree, we're so proud. Dad nodded approvingly. Stable career, good benefits. That's how you build a life. I sat 3 seats down, sipping water and watching the performance with the detached interest of someone observing a play they'd seen too many times. This was my role at family functions, the cautionary tale, the daughter whose marriage had failed, who'd moved back to town alone and quiet 2 years ago. Jenna, you should take notes, Mom had said to me earlier, her voice carrying that particular blend of concern and disappointment I knew so well. Maybe if you put yourself out there more, you'd find someone. You're 34. Time isn't standing still. I'd smiled and said nothing, which was my standard response to these observations. Aunt Rebecca, Dad's younger sister, had arrived late due to traffic from the city. She swept into the dining room in an elegant navy suit, kissed my parents, and made her way around the table greeting everyone. When she reached me, she pulled me into a genuine hug. Jenna, I haven't seen you since the settlement finalized. How are you adjusting? I opened my mouth to give some vague, polite answer, but she was already pulling back a chair beside me, her voice bright and carrying. How's life after that $5.4 million divorce settlement? Have you decided what to do with the brownstone yet, or are you keeping it? The effect was instantaneous and total. Vanessa's hand froze mid-gesture, the engagement ring catching light like a signal flare. Mom's smile crystallized into something brittle. Dad's head snapped toward us so fast I heard his neck crack. What settlement? Dad whispered, but in the sudden silence his voice carried perfectly across the table. I carefully straightened my silverware, lining up the knife with precision. The weight of every eye in our section of the dining room pressed against my skin. Aunt Rebecca looked around, genuinely confused by the reaction. The divorce settlement. From Jonathan. I saw the final paperwork last month when Jenna asked me to recommend a financial advisor for managing the assets. She turned to me. Did you go with Catherine like I suggested? I did, I said quietly. She's been excellent. Wait, Vanessa's voice came out strangled. You got $5 million. 5.4, Aunt Rebecca corrected cheerfully. Plus the brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, which is probably worth another $2.8 million in the current market. And the investment portfolio, but that's separate from the settlement itself. Mom's face had gone through 3 distinct shades of pale. Jenna. What is she talking about? I took a sip of water, buying myself 3 seconds to choose my words. Jonathan and I finalized our divorce settlement 14 months ago. Aunt Rebecca helped me find legal representation and a financial advisor to manage the outcome. Jonathan, Dad repeated slowly. Your ex-husband Jonathan? The one you never talk about. Yes. He gave you $5 million. Vanessa's voice pitched higher with each word. The court determined the settlement amount, I corrected. Based on his assets and income, plus the prenup he violated. Aunt Rebecca was beginning to realize she'd stepped into something. Oh. You didn't, they didn't know? No, I said simply. But how could we not know? Mom demanded, her voice drawing attention from neighboring tables. You are a daughter. How could something this significant happen without us knowing? You never asked, I said, keeping my tone even. When I came back to town 2 years ago, you asked if the divorce was finalized. I said it was in process. You said these things happen and changed the subject. We never discussed it again. Dad's lawyer instincts were kicking in. What kind of prenup violation results in a settlement that size? The kind where a spouse agrees to fidelity and exclusive partnership, then starts a company using marital assets without disclosure while having an affair with his business partner. I kept my voice clinical, factual. Jonathan's tech company sold for $47 million 8 months after our separation. My lawyers proved he'd used our joint accounts to fund the initial development while hiding the company's existence from me. The table had gone silent. Even the ambient noise from other dinner parties seemed to fade. 4 to 7 million. Vanessa's engagement ring suddenly looked very small on her hand. The company sold for that. My settlement was based on my ownership stake that should have existed, plus damages for the prenup violation, plus my portion of assets acquired during the marriage. I met my mother's eyes. The court was very thorough. Aunt Rebecca recovered first, her voice gentle. I'm sorry, Jenna. I assumed they knew. You'd been in touch with them about the apartment search, and I thought. It's fine, I assured her. They were going to find out eventually. When you searched for an apartment, Mom said slowly, you said you were looking for something modest. Something affordable on a teacher's salary. I was teaching, I confirmed. I still am, actually. I like it. But you have $5 million, Vanessa said, as if I might have forgotten. 5.4, plus the property assets and investments, I said. Yes. And I still teach middle school English because I enjoy it and the work matters to me. Dad's face was doing complicated mathematics. The brownstone in Brooklyn Heights. You own it? Yes. It was our marital residence. Jonathan wanted to sell it as part of the settlement, but my lawyer argued for ownership transfer instead. It appraised at $2.8 million. I paused. I'm renting it out currently. The income covers the property taxes and maintenance with enough left over to fund my retirement accounts. Jesus Christ, Dad muttered, which was notable because he never swore in public. Vanessa set down her fork with a sharp clink. So this whole time, while we've been worried about you being alone and struggling, you've been secretly rich. I wasn't struggling, I said. And I'm not secretly anything. I'm private. There's a difference. Why didn't you tell us? Mom's voice carried genuine hurt beneath the shock. I tried to, I said quietly. 3 times, actually. The first time, you said you didn't want to hear about Jonathan because it was too painful. The second time, Dad said he didn't want to know the sordid details of my failed marriage. The third time, you both said you were just relieved I was moving forward and we should focus on the present, not the past. The silence that followed was different, heavier, more uncomfortable. Aunt Rebecca touched my hand. Well, I think you've handled everything remarkably. Turning trauma into security takes real strength. Thank you. Uncle Mike, Aunt Rebecca's husband, leaned forward. I meant to ask, did you decide on the investment strategy Catherine proposed? The diversified portfolio approach. I did. 60% index funds, 25% bonds, 15% high-risk investments. It's been performing well. I smiled at him. Thanks for introducing me to her. She's exactly what I needed. You have a financial advisor, Vanessa said faintly. You have an investment portfolio. Yes. That's what you do when you suddenly have significant assets. You manage them responsibly. Dad found his voice, shifting into cross-examination mode. What about taxes? A settlement that size must have had substantial tax implications. My accountant handled it. The settlement structure minimized the tax burden, but yes, there were implications. All managed properly. You have an accountant, Mom echoed. Dad, you've told me my entire life to hire professionals for important matters. I have a lawyer, an accountant, and a financial advisor. I followed your advice. He blinked, apparently unable to argue with his own guidance being used against him. Vanessa's fiancé Marcus, who'd been silent throughout, cleared his throat. That's impressive financial planning. Most people would blow through that kind of money in 5 years. Most people don't grow up with a CPA father who drilled fiscal responsibility into them, I said, nodding to Dad. Some lessons stuck, even if others didn't. Mom twisted her napkin. But living in that tiny apartment when you could afford. I like my apartment, I interrupted gently. It's rent-controlled, close to the school, and perfect for one person. The brownstone is an asset, not a home. I don't need a 3,000 square foot house to prove I'm successful. But you let us think, Vanessa started. I let you assume, I corrected. You saw me teaching, living modestly, and decided that meant I was struggling. I never said I was. You just never asked any questions beyond the surface. Aunt Rebecca squeezed my hand. For what it's worth, I think you've built a beautiful life. The volunteer work you do, the teaching, the way you've invested in yourself, that's wealth that matters. Thank you. That means a lot. Uncle Mike nodded. Rebecca tells me you're funding 3 full scholarships at the community college. That's remarkable. Wait, Dad said. What scholarships? I established 3 annual scholarships for first-generation college students, I explained. Full tuition, books, and a living stipend for 4 years. It's important to me that financial barriers don't stop talented students. How much does that cost? Vanessa asked. Roughly $180,000 per year, total, for all 3 recipients across 4 years. It's one of the best investments I've made. Mom pressed her fingers to her temples. You're giving away $180,000 a year. I'm investing in education. And before you ask, yes, it's sustainable within my budget. Catherine helped me structure it so the scholarships can continue indefinitely through the investment returns. Dad sat back heavily in his chair. I don't understand how we didn't know any of this. You didn't ask, I said simply. Every family dinner, every phone call, you asked about my teaching, if I was dating anyone, whether I'd moved on from the divorce. You never asked about the actual divorce, the settlement, or what my life looked like beyond your assumptions. The words hung in the air, not accusatory, just factual. Vanessa looked at her engagement ring, then at me. When you congratulated me earlier about Marcus, were you? I mean, did you think it was funny? Me being excited about this? No, I said honestly. Vanessa, I'm genuinely happy for you. Your engagement isn't diminished by my financial situation. They are completely separate things. But I've been going on about the wedding costs. Which mattered to you? Your wedding, your excitement, your life. Me having money doesn't make your joy less valid. She blinked rapidly, and I realized she was fighting tears. Mom's voice came out small. You must think we're terrible. Ignoring your life while focusing on Vanessa's. I think you're people who made assumptions and never questioned them, I said. I don't think you're terrible. But I do think you decided I was someone to pity rather than someone who might have her life together in ways you didn't understand. The teaching, Dad said slowly. We kept pushing you to get a better job. A corporate position or private school. Because you assumed I needed more money. I don't. I teach because I love it. The fact that I don't need the salary doesn't make the work less meaningful. Aunt Rebecca stood. I need to say hello to some other people, but Jenna, call me this week? I want to hear how the brownstone tenants are working out. I will. Thank you for coming. After she left, the 4 of us sat in weighted silence. The anniversary party continued around us, laughter from other tables, the clink of champagne glasses, the string quartet in the corner playing something classical. What do we do with this? Mom finally asked. How do we process finding out our daughter has been wealthy for over a year and we had no idea? You could start by asking questions, I suggested. Real ones. About my life, not about how I fit into your narrative of what my life should look like. Vanessa set down her water glass. Can I ask something now? Really ask? Yes. Are you happy? The question surprised me with its directness. Yes. I am. I have work I love, financial security, good friends, and peace. I don't have romance, but I have a life I built deliberately. So yes, I'm happy. Even though the marriage failed. The marriage ending isn't a failure, it's an outcome. Jonathan and I were wrong for each other. Finding that out and moving forward isn't failure, it's growth. Dad leaned forward. I need to apologize. We should have asked more questions. Should have been more interested in the details of your life instead of projecting our assumptions onto you. Yes, I agreed. You should have. Can we start over? Mom asked. Can we start actually knowing you instead of who we think you are? That depends. Are you willing to accept that I might not be who you expected? That my version of success doesn't look like what you planned for me? They exchanged a look, some wordless communication that came from 35 years of marriage. Yes, Dad said. We're willing to try. It wasn't everything. It wasn't perfect reconciliation or immediate understanding. But it was something. Vanessa touched my arm. Will you still come dress shopping with me next month? I know my wedding probably seems insignificant now. It's not insignificant, I interrupted. It's your life. Your happiness. I'd love to come dress shopping. Her shoulders dropped with visible relief. Okay. Good. And maybe afterward, you could tell me about the brownstone? I've always wanted to see Brooklyn Heights. I'd like that. The party continued. Mom introduced me to relatives I barely remembered, but this time when they asked what I did, she said Jenna teaches middle school and does philanthropic work instead of just Jenna's teaching for now. Dad cornered me near the dessert table later. The scholarships. Can you tell me more about those? So I did. I explained the selection criteria, the partnership with the community college, the way we supported not just tuition but the whole student experience. He listened with real attention, asking detailed questions, taking notes on his phone. I'm proud of you, he said when I finished. I should have said that 2 years ago. I'm saying it now. Thank you. And I'm sorry we weren't there for you during the divorce. We should have pushed past your deflections and insisted on knowing what you were going through. Yes, I agreed. You should have. Can I make it up to you? You can show up differently going forward. That's all I'm asking. He nodded, absorbing that. Fair enough. 3 months later, I had dinner with my parents at a small Italian restaurant near my apartment. Vanessa and Marcus joined us. The conversation was different. Real questions about my teaching, my students, my volunteer work. Mom asked about the brownstone tenants. Dad asked if I'd considered putting some of the settlement into municipal bonds. Vanessa showed me wedding invitation designs and actually listened when I offered opinions. It wasn't perfect. Old patterns resurfaced sometimes. Mom's worry about me being alone, Dad's suggestions about what I should do with my money. But when they happened, I pushed back gently, and they listened. The brownstone's tenants turned out to be excellent. A family with 2 kids who loved the neighborhood and treated the property with care. Their rent covered all expenses and then some, exactly as Catherine had projected. The scholarships funded 3 more students that year. One of them sent me a handwritten note thanking me for making college possible. I framed it and hung it in my classroom. At Vanessa's wedding, Mom introduced me to distant relatives as my daughter Jenna, who teaches and runs scholarship programs. Not perfect, but closer to true. During the reception, Aunt Rebecca found me at the bar. How are things with your parents? Better, I said honestly. Not perfect, but better. They are trying. That's all you can ask. She clinked her glass against mine. And how's life in general? Beyond the family drama. I thought about my classroom full of students discovering poetry, the thank you note on my wall, the satisfaction of checking my investment portfolio and seeing the scholarships fully funded for another year, the peace of my small apartment with its perfect light, the life I'd built from the ashes of a marriage that wasn't meant to be. Good, I said. Life is really good. And I meant it.